My niece, Savannah, was born terminally disabled. She was born having over 300 seizures a day. They were what's called grand mal seizures or burst suppression seizures. They basically told us that there was no shot she would live past the age of 3. So what happened is, I mean, they hooked her up to all these devices. Like she was put in this little kind of bed with all these electrodes hooked up to her, these tubes hooked up to her, cameras on her 24/7 because they knew that she could die at any moment. Eventually ran over $1 million in tests on her to try to get a diagnosis of like, what is going on here? And eventually, when a child cannot eat or drink, you're faced with the decision of installing a G-tube or not. A G-tube is a hole in the belly, and they have a tube that you feed them through because a child can't eat or drink, which is obviously a death sentence. So they made the hard decision to install a G-tube, which usually does not go well. And this was my first introduction to the ketogenic diet, because in mainstream medicine, the ketogenic diet, what we now know as the diet trend, the keto diet, is actually a medical treatment to suppress seizures in epileptic children. There's actually an entire foundation called the Charlie Foundation, and all they do is they help families manage ketogenic living to suppress seizures. So they tried this in Savannah. She didn't turn out to be epileptic, so it didn't work. But the way that they do this is they say, okay, let's put this child on a ketogenic diet, very high fat, very low carb, and they're feeding her through a G-tube. So they do this with a formula. There's a formula called KetoCal that is made by Danone, which is a massive for-profit big food company, right? And they start giving her this formula. And I had done enough training in nutrition to think to look at the bottle and check the ingredients. And it was high fat, low carb for sure. And all mainstream medicine pays attention to is that. They're not really looking at the quality. All of the fat was hydrogenated vegetable oils, what we now call seed oils, soybean oil, sunflower oil, this kind of thing, cornstarch, just all sorts of junk, artificial flavorings and dyes, which is really weird because this is not touching a child's taste buds. Like, why are you putting artificial sweetener and sugars in there? And then all these synthetic vitamins. So synthetic versions of vitamins, what I call non-usable forms of vitamins. They're not using like methylcobalamin, or they're not using, folate, methyl tetrahydrofolate. They're using folic acid. And I brought this to the attention of the neurologist. I was like, this is not great. And he looks at the bottle, he looks at me, and he goes, I never thought to check that.
Wow.
And that was it, man. That was like my cliche red pill moment where I'm like, I think this is a beautiful human being and he's trying to help us. He's definitely trying to help our family. He cares about this thing, but he's doing standard of care. In mainstream medicine, that's what you do. You do standard of care so you don't lose your medical license. And the textbooks say when there's this diagnosis, you give this, blah, blah, blah. And I just was hit with the realization that nobody is coming to save us. This is all a for-profit marketing machine that has trained people to do standard of care that makes a tremendous amount of money for a lot of people. And I was like, if they're willing to put this into the belly of a dying infant, what else is on store shelves? What else is in hospitals?